Yo guys, just so you know, before I get into this video, I actually recorded the audio before Wednesday when all these crazy events happened. So hopefully that kind of avoids some confusion. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. So with the March Madness tournament for 2020 just right around the corner, I thought it'd actually be kind of a good idea to talk about some of the prospects coming up for the 2020 NBA draft. Now I know normally I don't really talk about college sports too much or really college basketball at all. And sometimes I do really for baloney basketball every now and then, but I don't know, I was watching a video the other day about a mock draft and I was thinking, you know what, it might be a good idea to start talking about them. So what's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops. And today I'm kind of just going to run through some of my thoughts about the 2020 NBA draft that's coming up in a few months. Now I'm not going to go through a complete mock draft. If you guys would like to see a mock draft, then of course like this video, comment down below, and I'll probably do one in the future potentially. But what I'm going to do is I kind of have a list, not of really every player either, so if your favorite player from college isn't listed on here, don't feel bad. I listed just some of the players I think could potentially be star players in the NBA, some that could be quality players, some could be potential role players, people that have the possibility of being a bust, and then just some other players to note, along with some player comparisons. So without further ado, let's just start with the future star players. And the first one seems like the most obvious one, and that's going to be James Wiseman. Now, James Wiseman, of course, he was going to Memphis until ultimately, there was a big issue, and now he's just not even, there's really nothing kind of keeping track of what he's doing. But he's a 7'1" center, 235 pounds. He was a freshman, and I mean, a comparison I would give him is probably Bob Lanier because he can knock down that mid-range shot. He's got a pretty nice post game, not a bad defender either. But obviously, I mean, he's projected to go number 1. I mean, most people have him linked to the Warriors because they need a center. But wherever he goes, I think he could definitely help them out, potentially being a star in the future. You also have Anthony Edwards, who's projected to be the second pick, who is kind of a shooting guard, can play small forward, from Georgia, 6'5" freshman who's 225 pounds, so he's got kind of a bigger body. And with that strength, I kind of would compare him to Dwayne Wade. He's not really the greatest three-point shooter, and I mean, it kind of reminds me of Dwayne Wade. He's very athletic, very quick, able to attack the basket back when he was at Marquette. So I think Anthony Edwards is a very good comparison to him. I don't know if he's necessarily going to end up being Dwayne Wade because that's some big shoes to fill, obviously, but regardless, I think that Anthony Edwards would be a potential star and definitely a good pick. The third one, probably the most known one for any really NBA fan, and that's Lamelo Ball. Now, Lamelo Ball, he is 6'8" now, which is kind of insane, but he is a point guard, shooting guard, and he is 180 pounds, which could be a concern. Now, a lot of people, you could compare him to Steph Curry in the sense that he does like to shoot the three-point shot, and he might be a little undersized now, not in height, but obviously with his build. I mean, 180 pounds, that's pretty light for a guy who's 6'8". But I mean, a comparison for him would probably be Penny Hardaway. I mean, Penny Hardaway is a bit of a taller point guard, and I mean, he could also shoot the three. A lot of these other ones that you could compare him to, obviously like Magic Johnson, wasn't really as skilled at the three-point shot. And I mean, I think LaMelo Ball has some star potential, but obviously it kind of just depends on the situation. Another one that I have that could be a star, I have Obi Toppin, who is a small forward, power forward at Dayton University. He's a sophomore who's 6'9", 220 pounds. And a comparison I have for him is Carmelo Anthony, because Carmelo Anthony, I mean, he's a very strong body that can play the 3 and the 4. And I think that he could potentially be that now. Potential. That's the thing here. I mean, I'm not saying these are all big shoes to fill. If Obi Toppin's at his best, he could be Carmelo Anthony. Regardless, though, I think he has star potential. And the last one I have is Josh Green, shooting guard, small forward at Arizona, 6'6", 210 pounds, a freshman, very athletic. I was trying to find a player that's very athletic, not really the greatest shooter, and could potentially be a star. And one that I kind of came across was Mark Aguirre. I think Mark Aguirre would be a really good fit to place on Josh Green's name. Now we got some quality players, some other quality players. We got Vernon Carey Jr., who's a power forward center at Duke University, 6'10", 265 pounds. He's a freshman. He can kind of stretch the floor a bit, and I mean, he has a very solid post game inside. Not a bad passer himself, and I mean, very serviceable defender too. So I think with that being said, we can compare him to probably Domantas Sabonis. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be like a superstar, but definitely has all-star capabilities. Another one is Cole Anthony, who is a point guard for North Carolina. A lot of people actually know him. He's 6'2", 185 pounds, and a freshman. But the thing is, he's not really the greatest shooter, not really too efficient either at the college level. And I mean, he does put up numbers. One thing that I would compare him to is probably Steve Francis, for the sake that he can definitely make a few all-star teams. That's his potential, I'd say, in the NBA. But I don't know if he's necessarily a point guard of the future or one of the next point guards on the come up to, lead the league necessarily. I mean, he could crack the top 5 point guards in the league one day. I don't know if he'll ever be like that number 1 or number 2 guy though. Saddiq Bey, a small forward for Villanova, 6'8", 215 pounds. He's a sophomore, really compared to, I'd say, Tobias Harris. He can stretch the floor. Actually probably does so better than Tobias Harris. He's kind of a taller body. He can play a small forward, probably even power forward. And he doesn't really weigh too much, so, I mean, he's very versatile. He might even be able to play shooting guard as well. Tyrese Haliburton, very popular guy. He's projected in top 5 in most mock drafts I've seen. Point guard, shooting guard at Iowa State. He's 6'5", 185 pounds, and a sophomore. He's slightly taller than probably your average point guard. Maybe not nowadays, because a lot of them are 6'4", 6'5" that get drafted. But one person I compare to him, because he's a great shooter and, he can do so much off the dribble, I'd probably say Gilbert Arenas. Gilbert Arenas, Agent Zero, he was one of those guys that, I mean, in his prime, he could average, basically 27, 5 and 5. It was basically insane. And Tyrese Haliburton has that capability. Killian Hayes is a point guard, shooting guard in France. He's 6'5" himself, 195 pounds. I'd probably compare him to Sleepy Floyd. Not too bad, but I don't know how much all-star potential he necessarily has. He might make 1 or 2. And potential role players from this draft class, Devon Dotson is a point guard from Kansas, 6'1", 180 pounds, a sophomore. He can really attack the basket, not really the greatest shooter. That's why I compare him to probably Eric Bledsoe at his best. Cassius Winston is a point guard from Michigan State. He's 6'1", 185 pounds, and he's currently a senior. Now, he reminds me a lot of Kyle Lowry, but I'm not going to put him as his comparison. I'm actually going to probably put Patty Mills, because Patty Mills is, of course, a winner as well. But I think he could potentially be Kyle Lowry if it all goes perfect. But yeah, we're just going to move on to Devin Vassell, who is a shooting guard at Florida State, 6'7", 195 pounds, pretty tall for his position, and he's a sophomore. I'm going to compare him to someone who's kind of shorter than him, though, in the league right now, and that's Malik Beasley. Catch and shoot threes, definitely something that he's strong at. He's able to put the ball on the floor. He just is a very talented player. Daniel Oturu, who's a center and power forward at Minnesota, 6'10", 240 pounds, sophomore. I compare him to Thaddeus Young, very fundamentally sound. Not anything too crazy about him, but yeah, he could play 4 or 5, which Thaddeus Young does for the Chicago Bulls. He did some with the Pacers last year too. Kaleb Wesson is a power forward for Ohio State, 6'9", 270 pounds. He's a junior, and he has a pretty big body, and he can play power forward. But, I mean, he's pretty strong with the ball. He can handle it, and he's got some good post moves, very fundamentally sound. I'd probably compare him to Boris Diaw. Now, possible busts. Now, first of all, we have Nico Mannion, who's the point guard at Arizona, 6'3", 190 pounds. Now, he could potentially be a very big bust because he's not very efficient himself, but one person that he could be if everything goes right, probably Rod Strickland. Deni Avdija, who's a small forward for Israel. He's 6'8", 210 pounds. Now, he could potentially be a bust. He could end up like Mario Hezonja, but if everything goes perfect, maybe Danilo Gallinari is his ceiling. Tyrese Maxey is a shooting guard for Kentucky, who's 6'2", 190 pounds. Now, he kind of has some DeMar DeRozan in him in the sense that he likes, mid-range game, attacking the basket, not really a three-point specialist. But, I mean, he could make it work, maybe like a guy like Otis Birdsong does. But I wouldn't really say that that's very helpful. He's going to have to adapt in the NBA today. He might not even get that much of an opportunity if he doesn't adapt. RJ Hampton, a point guard, shooting guard, who's 6'4", 175 pounds. Not very efficient himself, kind of ill-advised shot taking. And that's why I compare him to probably Ricky Davis if he, can actually pan out. But he might not even get there if he doesn't, obviously. And Jaden McDaniels is a small forward, power forward at Washington, who's 6'10" and 185 pounds. Now, he's a freshman, so he has some time to probably put on some weight, but I think that's his biggest concern, and that's why he could potentially be a bust. But, I mean, even if he doesn't put on too much and he becomes successful, he could end up like a Tayshaun Prince. Now, some other players to note are probably Jamius Ramsey, a shooting guard out of Texas Tech who's 6'4", 194 pounds, and a freshman. Now, he could end up like Ben McLemore, be a nice 3-and-D player. Also, you got Nate Reuvers, who's a power forward center at Wisconsin, 6'11", 235 pounds. He's currently a junior, and I mean, he can stretch the floor. He's not a bad defender. I think he could be comparable to probably Daniel Tice on the Boston Celtics. Marcus Zegarowski, who's a point guard out of Creighton, 6'2", 180 pounds, and a sophomore, which is pretty interesting because he's actually related to Michael Carter-Williams. I believe they're brothers, but ultimately, I think his game could pan out to Ben Gordon if everything works out. Yoli Childs is a power forward, small forward at BYU, 6'8", 225 pounds, and he's currently a senior, and he's very fundamentally sound himself and can shoot the three. I'd say probably like a Maurice Spates is his ceiling. And then, of course, you have Skylar Mays, who's a shooting guard out of LSU, 6'4", 205 pounds. Just like Childs, he is a senior himself, and his ceiling could potentially be Caris LeVert. Now, where does this draft class kind of compare to other ones? I mean, I kind of put it through a chart. I think potentially it might end up like 8th at best. You know, I don't know how great it could be, but the way it looks is that it probably will end up dead last. And that really means that this draft class is kind of going to be bad. There's not going to be too many gems per se, and that's kind of unfortunate because we've kind of been taking the other ones for granted. Like, obviously we have like great rookies coming out like every single year that could be an all-star after like 2 or 3 seasons, and I mean, that's probably not going to be the case for these guys. It might take longer or might not happen for a lot of these players. But I just kind of thought it would be interesting to talk about a lot of these guys because, I mean, the draft is only in a few months. The draft lottery is even quicker than that, so we kind of have to get on this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Of course, you know, if you want me to do a mock draft, be sure to like and comment that. But otherwise, I think that's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed, just like always, and I'm out. Peace.